Hi. We're about to start the novel by Thomas Hardy, H Tess of the D'Urbervilles. Before we do, we have to talk about naturalism. Naturalism is a literary movement that will start in Europe in the 19th century, and it will spread to America. Naturalism's definition is that characters are dominated by forces they cannot control. The forces are maybe nature, they may be the economy, they may be society, they may be something in themselves. If you can think back to freshman year and reading the story To Build a Fire, a man ventures out into the Alaskan Klondike thinking he's going to walk to his friends in 75-degree below weather, and the environment kills him, it freezes him to death. Characters are dominated by forces they can't control. But there's a second half to the definition. While they are dominated by forces they can't control, they can behave with strength and dignity. And when you read The Open Boat in AmLit next year, and The Great Gatsby, you'll see that. Hardy is in both camps. But to give you an example before we start this novel, I'm going to narrate something I already did, just to give you a taste before we start. From his other novel, which is The Mayor of Casterbridge. A man and a woman are walking down a dirt road in late summer, early fall, the dying season, toward the town of Waden Priors, where a small fair is in progress. The man is carrying a basket of tools, the woman is carrying a baby. They're not speaking to each other. As they approach the town, a man is leaving the town, and Michael, the man with the tools, says to him, "Are there any houses to be let or rented? Any work to be had around here?" And the man says, "No, there's no work around here, and most of the houses are being pulled down." They walk on. They reach the fair. It's been a long day. They've made a long journey. Hardy is always having his characters travel a long way. They're tired, they're hungry. So Susan looks at a couple of the tents that are on the fairgrounds. One says spirits. That's the alcohol tent. She doesn't want that one. The other one says furmity. Furmity is a type of stew, and they're hungry, so she figures, okay, let's go to the furmity tent. What she doesn't know is she just picked the wrong one. Because if you walk into the tent run by a woman who's named Mrs. Goodenough, who's not good at all, and you catch her eye, and you flip her a shilling or a coin, she'll put some gin in your stew. Well, Michael catches her eye, and he gives her a shilling, and he gives her another shilling, and another shilling, and he eats 3 bowls of stew, and he gets drunk. And when he's drunk, he starts to rail and criticize and ridicule his wife, how he's had nothing but trouble from her, and she's worthless, and this and that and the other thing, and I'm going to auction her off. Well, the guys hanging around in the tent are the low-life types. They've got nothing to do. You know, they're out-of-work servants. Some of them have bad shoes. Others have shiny pants because their pants are so worn. And they decide to pull their chairs up to watch the amusement. Hardy makes the point that the only animals on the fairgrounds left in the auction pen are the weak and diseased ones. Okay, we're about to auction off a person. And so Michael in his drunkenness starts his auction and talks and goes back and forth. And one guy just gives a bid, just for the heck of it, to see what's going on. And the auction isn't going too well when a sailor steps into the tent. And he sees what's going on. And he says, "I'll take her." Walks forward, puts his money on the table, and says to Susan, "Let's go." And as she's leaving, Susan takes off her ring and throws it at Michael and says, "I've had nothing but hard luck from you. Good riddance." And says to the sailor, "Can I bring the baby?" And he says, "More the merrier." They leave the tent. Michael falls asleep. When he wakes up the next morning, the fair is gone. He's on the top of a hill. His wife and his child are gone. He doesn't know where. And he resolves he will never drink for the rest of his life. Fate. Fate makes Susan choose the wrong tent. Fate makes the sailor arrive at exactly the right moment. Fate. Hardy is the master of fate. Tess of the D'Urbervilles, Chapter 1. And we begin with a chance encounter. A man is walking homeward. He's middle-aged, he's drunk, he's weak, he's poor, and riding toward him on a horse is a parson. And the parson rides up to him and by him and says, "Good night, Sir John." And the man on foot, notice the symbolism, the parson is higher in society, so he's higher up on the horse, and Jack Derbyfield is on the ground. He says, "Why do you say that to me every night? I'm just Jack Derbyfield." Well, the parson says, "It was just a whim. I've been doing research, and you are directly descended from the family of the D'Urbervilles, who came over with William the Conqueror in 1066. And you resemble them." And Jack wants to know, well, okay, I've been knocking around forever. I've always been poor. So where are my castles? Where are my lands? Well, he says, that's the problem. You're extinct. Your family's gone under. You don't have those things anymore. Oh, we got a major theme in the novel. The theme is the passing of the old ways. Old customs, old places are going down the tubes. So Jack says, "Where's our family mansions? Where's our estates?" And he says, "You haven't any. They're gone. Lands? You haven't any." Well, okay, what should I do about it? And now the parson announces a major theme in the novel. He says, think about this: how the mighty are fallen. How the mighty are fallen. It's the team that always wins, and then they start to lose. How the mighty are fallen. Common tale. As the parson rides away from this encounter, he doubts in his mind whether he did the right thing. He didn't do the right thing. He has initiated a series of events that will have a very bad ending. So his whim, because he's scholarly, it'd be better if he kept his mouth shut. Why? Well, because Jack Derbyfield now has an idea in his head. He sits down by the side of the road, and he's really elated by this news, and so a kid comes walking out of Marlet, and Jack Derbyfield says to him, "I'm the member of a noble race. And our lands and whatever we've got left is at a place called Greenhill, Greenhill, the Greenhill Fair. And it's a little place." Well, Jack says to this kid, "Go to Marlet, rent me a carriage, tell him to put a noggin of rum in it." The kid says, "Well, why should I do that?" He says, "Okay, here's a couple of shillings. Do this for me." And it's money that motivates the kid, not Jack Derbyfield's being descended from nobility. And being descended from nobility in this novel is going to be a curse, not a blessing. And so, "Yes, Sir John," the boy says, and he goes to rent him a carriage. Meanwhile, coming down a different road is a musical procession, and we are now in chapter 2. And Hardy starts by telling us that the village, not city, town, village of Marlet is a secluded place about 4 hours from London. He'll get into this more later. It's a beautiful countryside, it's a beautiful valley, and the traveler will be surprised and delighted to see it. The world is on a smaller and more delicate scale. The hedgerows are a network of green threads. Are we in the Garden of Eden, isolated from the outside world? We are. It's a historic district from a long time ago. It's densely wooded. Hardy points out that the woods are going to disappear. Why? Well, we're going to build houses, and we're going to build buildings with wood. The forests have departed, the passing of the old ways. The event that's causing the procession is called club walking. This is another custom that's disappearing because we're more modern now. All the women are dressed in white, the color of purity. Many of them are young, some of them are elderly. They're kind of pathetic, the elderly ones are, because this is the procession where we try to attract men who might want to marry us. It's a marriage market procession. Each woman carries a willow wand in her hand. Of course, the young girls are reasonably beautiful, beautiful eyes, beautiful figures, and so forth. They're cheerful. And then there's this other girl. It's Tess. And Hardy says she's fine, she's handsome, but she's got large, innocent eyes. Tess is very innocent, very naive, and she's got a red ribbon in her hair. And here comes her father riding down the road in the carriage rented for him. He's drunk and he's singing out how he's related to the D'Urbervilles or the D'Urbervilles. And on and on. Here, the girls laugh. And Tess defends him by saying he's tired, and then says, I won't walk with you if you laugh at him. She's defending her father. Okay. But now Hardy stops to talk about she has no experience at all. And she's, like a lot of you girls in the course, somewhere between the girl and woman stage. And we're not really sure where she is. She looks like a child still. There's some childhood things in her appearance. But she looks fresh, she's fine, she's picturesque. And she's very attractive. And she doesn't know it. Later in the novel, somebody will say beauty has a price. There are no men to dance, because those are the farm laborers and they're all working. And so, again, 3 young men come walking down the road. They are the descendant or sons of a parson. So they are the social superiors of these farm girls. And they are about to turn a corner when one of them decides to stop and dance with the girls. And he's different. He looks like he's a college undergraduate, but he has not found an entrance to a professional groove yet. Hardy will make more of this later. Leans over the gate. And the elder brothers stop and they say, what are you going to do, Angel? This is his name, Angel. So I always stop and ask one of the girls in the course, well, wouldn't you like to date an angel? Well, the girl goes, well, I guess so. Well, okay, names can be deceiving, but that's his name, Angel. Okay. And he wants to dance with the girls, and so asks them where their partners are, and they say, well, they're at work. And so he dances with girls. He dances with one, he dances with another, takes the first that comes to hand. And the clock strikes, and he has to leave. And he starts running down the road to catch up to his brothers. But there's one figure dressed in white who stands apart. It's Tess, and he has not danced with her. And she's hurt by this. He will hurt her later in the novel. But he doesn't think much about it. I don't like this guy at all. Chapter 3. We meet the next guy I don't like. Tess doesn't forget this. She doesn't really want to dance again. She's been hurt. She gets home at dusk. And she knows she's capable of attracting the local boys, but there were none of them there. And then there's that thing that happened with her dad, and that bothers her too. She was drunk again. Everybody saw it. And so she approaches her home, and she can hear her mother singing. Now, her mother's doing 2 things. She's completing the week's washing, and she's rocking her baby in a cradle. The only part of the problem is the cradle's rocker, which is supposed to be round, has a flat part, and it's never been fixed. So the child is being jarred back and forth while it's trying to sleep in the cradle that its mother is rocking. And it's not going too well. And her mother's singing a song that says, I saw her lie down in yonder green grove. Okay. Now, sometimes girls go to lay down in yonder green grove, and we hope that when they come out of the yonder green grove, they will be happy and they'll be all right. We hope. Okay. The interior of the house is dreary. The wash is being handled. It's kind of an unusual place. Her mother likes to sing. Joan Durbeyfield has some freshness in her features too. Joan has gotten her beauty from her mother. That was when she was young. And doesn't bear Tess any ill will for leaving the house to go dance for a little bit. She shouldn't. But announces to her that we've been found to be the greatest gentlefolk in the whole county. Why? Well, because we're related to these people. And on account of this, your father rode home in the carriage. Not because he'd been drinking. Well, he had been drinking. And it's not consumption that he has, her mother says. He's got some fat around his heart, and drinking might help it. So where is he? Tess asks. Well, he's at the bar, Oliver's, to get his strength up for the journey tomorrow. And we all go, wait a minute. You don't go and get loaded before a long journey. You go home and you drink some water and eat a good meal and get a good night's sleep. Well, he's at the bar getting loaded. And he's got to start after 12 tonight on this journey to the market to bring their beehives to market. Okay. Tess rebukes her mother. Go to a public house to get up his strength? That's absurd, she says. And her rebuke still fills the whole room. Tess knows what's going on here. Well, the mother says, I've got to go fetch him. Okay. But Tess says, no. And we now come to a book. And her mother has it. It's called The Complete Fortune Teller. Well, The Complete Fortune Teller is a book of superstition. Again, the passing of the old ways. Her mother is superstitious. She consults this superstitious fortune-telling book, but says it has to be put in the outhouse. She wants it out of the house when Tess is around. She brings it into the house when Tess is not. And so Joan Derbyfield goes to hunt up her shiftless husband. He is shiftless. Remember, he's a poor peddler, doesn't have a job. At Rolliver's. And really what she's trying to do is to get back to how things were when she and her husband were younger, when they were wedded, and they would go drink at the bar and have a good time during his wooing of her. We're trying to recall the past. And so Tess is left alone with the fortune-telling book and muses about why her mother uses it. We come to a major quote in the novel, and I'll read it to you, about Tess's role in this family. All these young souls were passengers in the Derbyfield ship, dependent on the judgment of the two Derbyfield adults. If the heads of the Derbyfield household chose to sail into difficulty, disaster, starvation, disease, degradation, death, these half-dozen little captives were compelled to sail with them, 6 helpless creatures. That's how it is, and these parents will sail them into misfortune. It gets late, the parents don't come back, and so Tess tells Abraham, her brother, I have to go myself. And so she's got to go to the bar to get her parents out of the bar. We're now in chapter 4. There are 2 bars in Marlett. One's the licensed one. It's legal under government rules. This one is not. It's Rolliver's. The booze is better there, but it's just a house, and the bar is in the upstairs bedroom. And to get around the legalities of it, Mrs. Rolliver always says to anybody who comes in the door, well, I'm just having a few friends in. And she says this just in case one of the government inspectors shows up and wants to see your license. No, I'm not a bar. I'm just having a few friends in for a social gathering. And there, sure enough, is Jack Derbyfield, humming to himself. He's got some drinking buddies, and one of them asks him pointedly, is there any money hanging by this? Well, no, there isn't, and there's not gonna be, but he thinks there might be. They must be our relation. And the idea is that Tess will go and claim kin. She will go to see these rich relatives, and something good will happen. We'll claim kin. Okay, if that's what you want to do. And Joan is excited because she tried Tess's fate in The Complete Fortune Teller, and it says that this will work out. She won't refuse to go. Why? And her mother knows her, and she says she's tractable. Tractable. Now, what do all teachers want their classroom students to be? They want them to be tractable. They want them to obey and not question or argue about anything, right? That's what tractable means. Tess can be told what to do, and she will do it. She is tractable, and her mother knows this about her. Well, okay, so here comes Tess, and she walks into Rolliver's. Even to her mother's gaze, the young girl's features looked sadly out of place amid the alcoholic vapors which floated here as no unsuitable medium for wrinkled middle age. And she looks once at her mother with those dark eyes, and immediately her parents get up to leave. Only problem is Jack Derbyfield is really drunk. And it's not comic, he's weak. And they try to disguise this. And so they start to walk home, and Jack Derbyfield unrealistically says, I'll be all right in an hour or two. Well, in an hour or two, he's dead asleep. He's out cold. And so the poor man can't go to market on the cart with the beehives. Somebody's got to go. Well, Tess volunteers. I think I can go if Abraham goes with me. And so, just after midnight, they're exhausted already. They have to get into this cart, load it up with the beehives, and start riding along to the market, to Star Castle. And Abraham's curious about what Tess is going to do. Are you going to marry a gentleman? Are we going to be rich? But then he asks this major league question. Tess, do we live on a good world, or do we live on a blighted one? Blight is a disease that affects apples. And Tess, without hesitating, says, we live in a blighted or diseased world. Considering what's about to happen to her, she's right. It's too bad we didn't pitch on a sound world. Okay? And you would have been a rich lady, and we'd be wealthy. Not going to happen. The cart is rocking back and forth, being pulled by the horse named Prince. Nobility again. He's probably the most noble being in their family right now. He doesn't need much attention to go plodding along. But around the corner, in the dark, comes the morning mail cart pulled by a fast horse who is harnessed to 2 poles on either side of him. And the poles have sharp points. And he whips around the corner, and one of the points pierces Prince in the heart. Prince falls to the ground, bleeding a lot, and he dies. Fate. Now we come to a major characteristic of Tess, because in the dark, standing there, seeing the horse Prince dead, she says this, "'Tis all my doing, all mine, no excuse for me." She's blaming herself. And we now know that Tess has a hyper conscience. Tess is the type of person who says, "I'm sorry," all the time, for things that aren't even her fault remotely. This isn't her fault. It's her father's fault. He's an alcoholic. He should be driving the car. But she doesn't see it that way. And she will criticize herself and beat up on herself about this incident for a long time and feel really guilty about it, but it's not her fault at all. And she thinks this has happened because we live on a blighted planet, a diseased planet. And so she's got to go home. No beehives to market, no money. And now they've had a misfortune. And so they hire somebody to take the horse's body and turn it in. They're going to sell the horse to the knacker and the tanner, somebody who can do something with the hide or the body or whatever. But Jack Derbyfield summons up whatever pride he's got left and says, "No, I'll bury him myself." He worked harder the next day in digging a grave in the garden than he had worked for months to grow a crop for his family. He will dig a hole for his horse. He won't feed his family. But Tess sees herself as a murderess, and blood has been shed in the novel. More blood will be shed later. I'm not going to tell you about murder. Chapter 5. Now, Jack Derbyfield is a slack-twisted fellow. He's the kind of guy, he can work hard in short spurts, but don't count on him for a sustained effort of hours. And so he buries the horse. And now Joan Derbyfield begins to manipulate and broach her scheme. If there is such a lady as the D'Urbervilles somewhere, maybe you should go see her. You could go around and do anything for her. And she turns to her husband to settle it, because he's the head of the noblest family. Well, if this is the noblest family of the D'Urbervilles, then we're in bad shape. Hardy, though, again stops to talk about the Vale of Blackmoor, where Marlett is, and says that it is a secluded world. It's her whole world, and the outside world is a mystery to her. She's never been anywhere else. She's never left this valley. She's innocent about the outside world. Hardy says she's been loved by others. She's had good friends, good girls who are her friends. They show affection to each other, but as she gets older, she sees how matters stand in her house, that she's the eldest, that the burden of taking care of those young kids is going to fall more and more on her shoulders, and she can't get out from under that burden. Supposedly in a place called Trantridge, though, the D'Urbervilles do live, and they're in a country house. And so she's going to go there, and it's going to be a long journey. She's going to take it on a carriage. At least she won't have to walk. That won't be the case later in the novel. And so she's sent. Her mother sends her. Puts her best dress on her, makes her look as per her prettiest. She gets into the carriage. She rides there. It's a long ride. And she reaches this place, walks up the drive or the road to the house and looks at it, and something's wrong. It is not an ancient stone castle. It is a new house of new construction. And Tess says, I thought we were an old family, but this is all new. And she turns away. Later in the novel, she will make another very long journey and come to a house hoping that someone is there, and there won't be, and she will turn away. And as she turns away and begins to walk back down the drive, here he comes. This family is not the D'Urbervilles, Hardy says. Their real name is Stokes. That's the real name. Mr. Simon Stoke became rich as a merchant and moneylender, and because he didn't like his name, he wanted something fancier, so he went to the British Library, did some research, and picked a name, D'Urberville. Now, if we got a lawyer in the group, he's going to say, well, wait a minute, you got to go through a legal process to change your name. Well, Stoke didn't do this. He just took the name. So this isn't real. And as she walks back down the walk or the driveway, there's a tent on her right, and out of it comes a man who of swarthy complexion and a force of a gentleman's face, and says to her, as she walks by him, I gotta get to the right page, excuse me. Well, hello, my big beauty, and what might I do for you? And I always ask somebody in the class, usually a female, is he hitting on her? She always says, yeah. I say, you know it, does she know it? And the girl always has to think for a minute. She said, I don't think she does. He's hitting on her, and she does not know it. Okay. Well, hello, my big beauty, and what might I do for you? He's smoking. Well, I came to see your mother. Well, she's an invalid. Interesting word. If you take the word invalid and you turn it into the word invalid, it means false. These are not the D'Urbervilles. They're the Stokes. They've got an invalid last name. Okay. So she starts to talk to him about her errand, and he notices her lips are rosy, and he's attracted to her. Well, who isn't? And I've seen him come to see we're poor relations. He said, Stokes? And she says, no. Oh, D'Urbervilles, yeah. Well, our names are corrupted. Let's look at that word, corrupt. Well, he's as corrupt as can be, and she's stumbled on a corrupt family. He says, well, my pretty girl, he keeps hitting on her, he just won't let up. I, for one, don't regret her step. So she's here, she says, to claim kin, to maybe get some financial help because they've lost their horse. She's intending to go back right now, but he holds her. He takes her into his tent. Let's walk around. He asks her questions. He feeds her a strawberry from his hand. She says, I would rather take it from my own hand. He doesn't care. We get a little bit of an R-rated event when he puts it in her mouth. And everybody who watches the film goes, oh. She's sort of hypnotized by him. He feeds her some food. He watched her pretty and unconscious munching. He, who was to be the blood-red ray in the spectrum of her young life, he's bad news. And I always ask the question here, which creep do you prefer? The one you can spot from the get-go, or the one who leads you down the garden path and then reveals himself to you? Without hesitation, whoever I ask that says, I'll take A. This guy is A. Okay. And again, we're reminded that in his eyes, she looks like a woman. But is she? Is she a girl or is she a woman? And she's still got this guilt that she killed the horse, and that's why she's here. We come to another major quote in the novel, which I have to read, because this is Hardy's pessimism. His first marriage was bad, and it made him pessimistic. In the ill-judged execution of the well-judged plan of things, the call seldom produces the comer. The man to love rarely coincides with the hour for loving. Nature does not often say, see, to her poor creature at a time when seeing can lead to happy doing, or reply, here, to a body's cry of where, till the hide and seek has become an irksome outworn game. We may wonder whether at the acme and summit of the human progress, these anachronisms will become corrected by a finer intuition, a closer interaction of the social machinery than that which now jolts us round and along, but such completeness is not to be prophesied or even conceived as possible. What's he saying? Well, he's saying that the universe is controlled by a being who's not going to bring us the right person every time, and the wrong person is going to show up. This is Hardy's pessimism. And as she leaves, he says to himself, what a charming girl. We know where his mind's going, okay? There's no doubt about it. We're now in chapter 6. Gets back into the carriage to ride home. Looks, she doesn't have to walk. He's given her a lot of roses. One of them pricks her finger. Bloodshed again. And she gets home. It's the following afternoon. She enters the house. Her mother's triumphant and says, great, there's a letter's arrived. Wow. Who's it from? Well, his mother. Oh, really? There's a little problem with his mother writing the letter. The problem is she's blind. He wrote the letter and wants her to come and manage a poultry farm. Now, Tess doesn't know anything about managing poultry, but Joan says, oh, you can learn. It's not that hard. Tess doesn't want to go. I'd rather stay with you and Father. I don't know why. A little while later, some money arrives. They get a new horse. I wonder who sent that money. Why did he send that money? And it turns out while Tess was gone, Alec has been there. Do you get the feeling he's stalking her? Joan says he's a mighty handsome man, but Tess says, I don't think so. Well, let's talk about that. There's beauty and handsomeness. It can be physical. It can also be personality or spiritual. You'd like to meet somebody who has both. Does this guy have both? Okay. And there's Joan, who wants Tess to be made a lady, and Joan is trying to revive their past status, and you can't do it. John Durbeyfield had no more conceit than energy or health. And so Tess says the following, I killed the old horse, and I suppose I ought to do something to get you a new one, but I don't quite like Mr. D'Urberville. We don't like him either, but she's going to go. Her hyperconsciousness and her guilt are motivating her. And her mom knows how to play the guilt card. And Tess says, okay, I will go. But she's just going, she says, for an opportunity to earn money. She's not going for marriage. And a spring cart will arrive to pick her up. And Hardy ends chapter 6 by saying she had hoped to be a teacher at the school, but the fate had seemed to decide otherwise. Tess will be a teacher for us. She will teach us many things. Just because she doesn't have a teaching degree in front of a classroom doesn't mean she's not going to teach us. Next time, chapters 7 through 13 of Tess of the D'Urberville.